Hey, my name is Demeter. I'm an indie filmmaker for 25 years. I made my first horror short film when I was 18 years old in 2000 called Picnic, and I made several other horror short films, and I'm actually right now working on my first feature horror film titled Dreamland Awaits, which is in post-production and should be coming out early next year. In this video I want to talk about why I think horror is one of the best genres to develop into and to get into if you're an indie filmmaker or an amateur filmmaker and you're just starting out and you don't have a big budget, but you still want to make something interesting and fun. If you want to make like a sci-fi film, you need expensive world building, which costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of visuals, you have to build sets and stuff like that. If you want to make an action film, that needs a lot of actions. It needs stunts, it needs, action-packed sequences with a lot of shots and stuff like that. That all costs a lot of money and a lot of time. But with a horror film, you can make a horror film, even a feature film, if the story is good enough and interesting enough, you can make it in one location with just a few actors. You can get away with so much with just using lights and shadows in horror films. Even in big budget horror films, most of the time they are shooting at night or they are shooting at dark locations just because they don't want to show the whole creature or the whole special effects what they did, because it might not look that good. And I think sometimes it's even better if you don't show the whole creature, because then your mind is just going to fill up the gaps, and it might be even scarier than what your original concept was. So that's why I think it's not a problem to keep a lot of things in the dark if you're making a horror film. That way you can keep up the tension and also save a lot of money, because then you don't have to build that extensive sets, and you don't have to, like, if you have like a bodysuit, a monster bodysuit, it doesn't have to work from all the angles, it just has to work from the front. And if it works from the front, you can choose the shots and the compositions that you want to use in and make it work that way. I'm pretty sure that right now at your home you have enough ingredients to create pretty convincing fake blood. If you're using extensive amounts of blood, even if you're not using any kind of other practical effects like wounds or limbs or whatever that you have, like fake limbs and stuff like that, it's still going to have an effect. Yeah, just go for it and work with whatever you have. Horror is universal. Every culture has their own scary stories, scary legends, folk horror tales, or whatever you want to call it. And I think people in general love being scared. Not everybody, of course, it's not for everybody, but I think it works the same way as a comedy. When you laugh, you're being entertained and you're having a good time, and that way your mind can rest. You forget your everyday problems, and basically you can just you switch off your mind and just watch a movie for 90 minutes and entertain yourself. So I think it doesn't have those kind of cultural limitations that, for example, comedies can have, because like there can be amazing comedies made in, for example, France or England, but you have to be an Englishman, you have to be a Frenchman in order to understand these kind of jokes, because you didn't grow up there, you don't know the traditions, you don't know the culture. So most of the jokes are just going to fly over your head because you're just not going to get them. That's not the case with horror films. Even if it's like a specific folk tale to a specific region or culture, it's still going to work on the other side of the world as well, because they have very similar stories. And basically, if you just swap the ghost to a werewolf, or the werewolf to a vampire, or the vampire to a troll, or whatever, it's the same. Every culture has the same kind of stories. The characters might be different, they still works the same way. Just another little note, if you want to make your movie universal, you better shoot it in English. I'm from Hungary, and I just shot a horror feature film, and if I would have shot it in Hungarian language, it might have worked pretty good, but I would just limit my own possibilities during distribution and limit my own possibilities even just, getting people watching my movie. Horror teaches you everything. I think horror is one of the most creative genres to work in, and just because you just need so many things to make a horror film work. You need visuals, you need great sets, you need lights, you need props, you need sound effects, you need music, you need a good story, interesting story. Of course, the actors, special effects, stuff like that. All aspects of filmmaking have to come together to create something interesting for a horror film. You learn so much more than you would with other genres, because you have to think creatively at every step. Every decision matters, every choice matters, and everything is going to be on screen, so it's going to be visible, and you can try out things pretty easily. You can experiment with stuff if you have the time. Horror is a pretty flexible genre. There is no genre out there which cannot be combined with horror genre. It can be a sci-fi horror, a comedy horror, found footage horror, psychological horror, folk horror, ghost horror. You know, there are just tons and tons of subgenres. You can just put these things together and make them work. Of course, a vision is very important, but I think with choosing your genres and combining them together, you can be pretty liberal, and you can basically come up with weird combinations, and it can be still fun if you make it in the right way, and if you have a strong vision, it can be still a lot of fun. Horror fans are just the most forgiving viewers out there, for sure. Like, you can get away with so many things if you're making a low budget horror film, but you put your heart in it, and people can see that you're just, you know, you made something fun, you have a good, interesting story, or the actors are having fun on set, or you know, whatever your niche is or your shtick is. If it works, the audience is going to be grateful for it, and they're going to forgive all your mistakes and all your shortcomings just because they are having fun and they are enjoying your movie. I don't have a statistic by this, but I think the horror genre has the most low-budget films out there for sure. Yeah, just one final tip. If you're making a horror film, or any kind of film for that matter, sound is very important. A lot more important than you would think. Sometimes it's even more important than the visuals themselves. It can make or break a movie. It's just so important to have good sound recording on set already, because you're going to save yourself a lot of work in post-production. And also, if your dialogue is not understandable, if the audience can't understand your actors, what your actors are actually saying, they're not going to get the story, and if they're not going to get the story, they're not going to enjoy the film. It's just that simple. If you're a rookie filmmaker and you're just starting out and you don't have a big budget, of course I'm not saying that horror is the only genre to choose. I'm just saying that it's a pretty good deal if you go into the horror genre and try to make something, because you can learn so much and you can create something fun, and then you can be sure that the audience at the end is going to have fun as well, and they are going to thank you for it if the movie is good.